I've got enough food stockpiled to last me at least a year. My many sources of water will get me through any catastrophe. I have a network of stocked hideouts so I can bug out at a moment's notice. I have an unlimited amount of wood. I won't be left in the cold. I am preparing for World War III.
Jimmy believes that because of dwindling resources and failing economies, a major world power will invade and occupy the United States.
It's gonna be your top dogs, people like China, Russia, and the US. Hopefully they won't be stupid enough to use nuclear weapons. Land grabs are going on with Russia now. They're trying to reform the Soviet Union. The Chinese are sleeping like a very dangerous dragon. They team up with Russia, we're gonna be in a world of trouble.
In preparation for World War III, 25 years ago, Jimmy Falcon moved to a secluded stretch of land, a mile high into the Rocky Mountains, and 7 miles from the nearest town.
25 years is a pretty good time to acclimatize yourself to extremes. I'm probably a little bit more capable of surviving pretty harsh conditions, whereas other people may not. A few decades ago, I was under contract where I had to work for the Department of Defense. My gut feeling said, you know, you might better pack away a few things and just kind of be ready for whatever happens. If a war broke out, the first year will probably be awful. We could get bombed. They're gonna knock out all of our creature comforts as far as our electricity, our grid's gonna get knocked out. People will panic.
So everything in Jimmy's life is part of his survival plan, from the location of his home to his 2 cats. Montana holds the record for the coldest temperature ever recorded in the United States outside of Alaska, -70 degrees. Not having heat is a matter of life or death, so Jimmy built his home to withstand the extreme climate.
If you're not acclimatized to the harsh conditions and it gets 50 below and you don't have any wood, you are totally gonna be at nature's mercy. And nature is very unforgiving to the people that are not prepared. Heat's the biggest commodity. When it gets 50 below, it's got the most value of anything up here.
In just 1 week, Jimmy can burn through about 130 cubic feet of wood. So to survive each winter, he needs to collect up to 2,500 cubic feet of wood.
Wood is my main source of heat. If you don't have wood, you're done. You know, you're gonna freeze.
I have enough food stock to last 20 people for 3 months. I have a storage tank, 4 ponds, and a nearby well. I have an underground bunker to keep my family safe for when disaster strikes. I'm prepping for a terrorist attack on our electrical grid that will send our society into chaos.
Evidence collected by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security suggests that cyber attacks on the electric grid are increasing both in frequency and sophistication. Roger believes a catastrophic terrorist attack on our electric grid is imminent and could send our nation back 150 years overnight.
We're literally one successful cyber attack away from our worst fears. An entire country with no electricity. With no electricity, gas pumps don't work, trucks that take groceries to your grocery store don't travel, and in 3 days, this nation will be in chaos. And when people cannot feed their children, they'll be killing their neighbors to steal their food. It's not going to be a light a candle and wait 30 minutes for the lights to come back on. It's going to be a life-changing event for every man, woman, and child in this country. And everything that we take for granted will be gone.
The state of Texas leads the nation in privately owned working farms. And with 3 generations of farming behind them, Roger and his wife, Jenny, live and work on their family farm, just 1 hour outside of Dallas.
My day usually starts off with feeding all the animals, immediately followed by water the garden and the orchard. Then whatever time is left in my day is working on my preps. This is the one I want to use from rabbit cages.
To avoid federal regulations, Texas is the only state in the continental U.S. that has a completely self-contained grid, making it harder for the state to rely on its neighbors if there is a cyber attack. Roger fears that when the power goes out, there will be chaos above ground, so he's planning to take his family below it.
I would absolutely consider the bunker the biggest project in my life.
I'm preparing my family for the imminent collapse of the United States economy.
Steve H., a contractor in Washington State, fears that economic collapse will encourage widespread riots and looting, and that his home in an easily accessible neighborhood could become a target.
We've taken steps at our house to ensure our safety. Alarm, video camera, guns, traps. But in the doomsday scenario that I see coming, that place is not going to be safe. There's going to be people roving in bands, coming and hitting people's houses and stuff. And when that happens, I plan on being long gone from there. That's why I got my bug out location.
Steve's bug out location is a cabin deep in an undisclosed mountain range 50 miles away. For the past year, the family has traveled there on weekends to add to their stockpiles.
Now, a regular family, they may play their soccer games, they may go to church on the weekend. We used to do all those things. Now we spend our time prepping for what we see is coming. Because I believe that any rational individual, when they know what I know, would behave in a similar manner.
Every Monday, Steve sets a prepping goal for the family. By the end of the week, Steve's wife, Kim, 20-year-old Nick, and 8-year-old Stephen James must all help increase the stockpile of preps, which will be taken to the cabin that weekend.
This is 30-06, which is good for big game hunting. This is a 22 for, squirrels, rabbits. It's got a 75-round drum clip on it, so it holds quite a bit. And then AK-47, small 9mm pistol, and then a Glock 40 cal.
This is it's a water filtration set. I need to put in my bag if we have to, if there's like dirty water and then we could purify it.
Food saver is a prepper's best friend.
Absolutely. That's not just for food either.
Yeah.
It's a 22 long rifle, and we vacuum seal them to keep them safe from moisture or other contaminants that might be in our bunker, and so that when we go back, they're safe and sound.
I'm preparing for a meltdown at the Indian Point nuclear facility.
Uptown in Harlem, Margaret Ling fears an act of nature will destroy the city she grew up in.
I'm preparing for a catastrophic hurricane.
Downtown on Wall Street, Jay, a bond trader who vividly remembers the day the World Trade Center towers fell, is bracing for New York to be hit again.
I'm preparing for another terrorist attack.
Regardless of what form their doomsday takes, all three of these preppers believe they'll face the same challenge.
You only have so many bridges leaving New York City. You're talking about trying to get 8 million people out of the city, 30 million in the region.
The mayhem, the panic.
Mass hysteria, and the city will be out of control.
It'll be every man for himself at a certain point.
A complete evacuation of Manhattan has never been attempted. If any large-scale disaster struck the city, these preppers fear it might be impossible. The city's fragile system of bridges and tunnels could become flooded, jammed, or shut down within hours, leaving millions trapped on a 23-square-mile island without access to food, fresh water, or electricity. That's why, for these three New York preppers, at the first sign of trouble, survival comes down to one objective.
Get out of New York City.
Leaving Manhattan as soon as possible.
Grab my bag and just jet out.
they've also paired with a mentor to help them refine their plan. Krav Maga instructor Matan Gavish, preparedness expert Eitan Edwards, and urban survivalist Shane Hobel. Now, over the course of one night, all three preppers will put their bug-out plans into action for the first time. An attempt to escape New York.
I served in the United States Air Force for 4 years. I was trained as a firefighter and paramedic. Because of my training in the Air Force, I am always alert and trying to think of the worst case scenario of an environment. What would happen if an emergency occurred right now? What would I do? What steps would I take to protect myself and my family? My instinct tells me now that that danger could be coming towards me and my family. Everything that we are accustomed to today could go away tomorrow. I'm preparing for martial law. Any sort of threat towards the government on the United States soil could lead to an enactment of martial law. We all have examples of what lawlessness can do to cities. Los Angeles riots. Inevitably, Dallas will look like New Orleans after Katrina. Once lawlessness takes over, there will be people that will do whatever it takes to steal, to hurt, to harm. I want to do whatever it takes to prepare so that those individuals cannot harm me or my family. Under martial law, anything can happen. They can reduce our access to fuel, they can reduce our access to power. So it's important that my family is able to survive without the aid or benefit of anyone outside our property. Power is essential. My pride and joy are my solar panels. What we've done is we've created a solar panel system that are mobile. And I have enough stored power to supply my home with electricity without recharging for a week. And I don't have to pay anybody a cent. Prepping has become so addictive. I got my first bucket of food and it took off from there.
Rob has enough food to feed his family for 2 years. He makes his own bullets so he won't run out. And he has a stockpile of weapons.
Firearms are important at any time, but especially after martial law is declared. I need to protect my home. I need to protect my property. I need to protect my family.
Lindsay is the co-host of a radio show in Boise, Idaho, about organic gardening and the Back to the Land movement.
Today we're talking about food preservation.
She and her husband, Ray, pride themselves on their urban homesteading lifestyle. But Ray and Lindsay aren't homesteading just for nutritional or environmental benefits. Getting back to the land is their key to survival if the world as we know it ends.
We're preparing for the collapse
Of the world's agricultural system.
What people don't realize is that a lot of preppers are people like us. We're everyday business owners. We run very normal lives. My daughter goes to gymnastics. I take her to school every day. Back in the day, everybody was prepared because they weren't so reliant on other people to make sure their lives work. So preppers today are really like how our ancestors used to be, smart.
In 2012, the United States saw one of the worst droughts since the 1930s Dust Bowl, and the hottest year ever recorded in U.S. history. Nearly 80% of the country's agricultural land was affected, and soybean and corn prices were at record-breaking highs. Ray and Lindsay weren't surprised.
The collapse of the world agricultural system is happening now. In the Midwest, we're having mass amounts of drought. Climate change is changing the way that Farmers are able to reliably produce their food. People are severely detached from the food system. Nobody knows how to farm. For the most part, we've got a whole bunch of city dwellers that are dependent on a very small population of farmers to keep them alive. And if those farmers aren't able to deliver that food to the table, people are going to panic and not be able to eat and feed their families.
If the world's agricultural system collapses, Lindsay's convinced only those capable of producing their own food will be able to survive. So she actively encourages her entire community to ready themselves through her weekly call-in radio show on sustainable living.
Hi. If the food supply chain collapses, how quickly could we run out, and what should I be doing to prepare?
3 days worth of food is all we have if all of a sudden we just stopped supplying our supermarkets. After that, you're on your own. Even if it's a small disruption, it could really turn into a lot of chaos. If you've got your own garden and if you've got your own ability to store and prepare food, then it's not going to affect you that much.